Nicholas Ryan Kelly is a composer who draws inspiration from speculative fiction, science, and nature. He has been commended by the Vancouver Sun for sophisticated work of immediate glittery appeal and called a rising star in the constellation of Canadian composers by Oregon Art Watch. Originally drawn to music's storytelling power through symphonic film scores, he now brings that sense of cinematic drama to music for choirs, orchestras, and wind bands throughout North America. Originally from rural New York State, Nick is now a permanent resident of Canada and lives in BC's beautiful Okanagan Valley. I wanted to interview Nicholas because I liked what I heard. He creates melody, something sadly missing in a lot of new music. I think that as he gains confidence in his melodies and more fully develops them, with some punch on top, he will become an important and memorable composer. Mm-hmm. So who was your first teacher, the one that really lit the fire in you?
I can't say it goes back to a single person. If anyone, it might have been a good friend of mine in junior high, whose parents happened to be the band teachers. They were also good, of course, but I was already, interested in music in some capacity. Like, I was playing trombone in the school band, and my parents realized that I had a good ear, so they made me take piano lessons too. But I didn't like to practice. I was an improviser, although I didn't know that was the case at the time. And this friend in junior high, I guess I was 13, he gave me a free copy of Finale Notepad, music notation software, and I thought, wow, this is the coolest computer game. I can write, this line for the trombone and this line for the violins and hear them play back together and, figure out ways to make them sound cool. So I didn't have any music theory training at that time, and my teachers were, very focused on making me a better performer, which I'm grateful for, but there wasn't much of an aspect of composition to that. So it was really just, it was a way for me to play with this musical knowledge that I was getting but didn't really know what to do with. And composing independently came quite a ways before choral music. I mean, I was composing when I was 13 and would, play things out of my head rather than practicing out at the piano. I just didn't know what that was. Just I didn't realize it was composing when I was playing with, the sounds in Finale Notepad on my computer. I think it sort of became composing maybe when I was 14. I wrote a piece for my high school band that they were great sports about because I had no idea what I was doing. And I was listening to a lot of movie music at the time. I think that's really what got me hooked on the idea of writing classical music or writing orchestral music. And that, led me down that rabbit hole to study music at university. All through those years, I was more focused on writing for film. I wrote for a lot of student films and writing for wind ensemble because I was a trombonist. But film music, as you may know, it's not so much about about what the composer has to say, which is fine. That's nothing against, that craft. But it's a craft that's very much just about, actualizing the director's vision and, giving voice to what they have to say rather than what you have to say. And I'm kind of a control freak, so I wanted to write my own stuff. Wind ensemble music just is very time-consuming and difficult to write, but I've been doing a little bit of that on and off for many years. I'm sorry, for my interest in band music and movie music, I realized what drew me to those genres, and especially to movie music, was the story. So when you don't have the film, sometimes it was a little bit harder for me to, give the music a shape, to create some kind of form. But then I discovered classical vocal music, and my wife is actually a classical singer. And in classical music, unlike in pop music, you usually start with like a pre-existing poem, so the composer doesn't write the words. And finding all these great poems, I've always been interested in poetry. These poems sort of provided a map for the music. Just a sense of where it can go emotionally, where the high points and low points are, and what I can really, add some tension to. So I started out just writing solo songs for a while. Problem with that is not many people want to perform classical solo songs. And if they do, there's, they have Mozart and Schubert and Brahms to fall back on, so it's hard for me to compete with those guys. But choral music, there are so many choirs, and they're just hungry for new music. And I can also get, a much bigger, not necessarily symphonic, but definitely more colorful sound out of a choir than I can out of a solo vocalist.
Listening to your music, I notice that all your inspiration is very sort of Byron Shelley, romantic, into nature, almost escapist. So are you escaping from something? And if so, what is it? And if not?
I don't think I'm escaping from anything necessarily, and I would challenge that idea that it's all necessarily that romantic. I do read, or I guess I do set a lot of poetry from that time period when, the fluffy, naturey stuff was very much in vogue. But when I do set that stuff, I choose poems that have some kind of deeper meaning, usually. Like you have, I see up here, A Flame in the Embers. That's a choral piece, I think based on a text by Marjorie Pickthall, who is Canadian and, was very much in this late 19th century English school of, oh, nature, how lovely. But even though it's about this garden, it's about maybe a garden in winter or at night, and it's not in its prime. You're seeing, when you walk through a garden, in the winter, you see what it could be or what it has been, but the moment, I think, is very bleak and cold, so it's about, trying to capture this, this place that you want to escape to, maybe, but you can't quite get there because of the reality. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Are interested in composing.
For people that are compelled, not interested, that's different. Compelled, find themselves doing it obsessively.
For people who are compelled to explore composition, well, I think there are still good teachers out there. There are even YouTube channels you can go to that cover the basics, but I think a general music literacy is still really important. There are a lot of people who, produce music on their computers. That's not really classical, but there is some overlap.